An interview and question and answer session with our science guest of honor, Tracy Drain. So Tracy joined the NASA family in 2000 when Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California hired her. She had just finished up her work on her master's degree in mechanical engineering from Georgia Tech. That said, Tracy wasn't exactly new to NASA. While working on her bachelor's degree at the University of Kentucky, she interned at the Langley Research Center in Virginia. During her 25 years with JPL, Tracy has worked with the development, testing, and operation of 5 key missions that I expect many people here are familiar with: the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, Kepler, Juno, Psyche, and most recently, the Europa Clipper. So after being the lead flight systems engineer for the Europa Clipper, Tracy then served as the Launch to Mars mission manager for the Clipper. So in that role, she led operation teams in preparation for the Clipper's Mars Flyby Assist, which is a hugely important milestone in the Clipper spaceship's almost 5.5-year journey to the Jovian system. Unsurprisingly, Tracy's accomplishments have earned her several awards and recognitions, including NASA's Exceptional Achievement Medals for her work on Kepler and Mars Reconnaissance Orbit, and JPL's Bruce Murray Award for her exceptional support for the education of minority and female STEM students through community programs, distance learning, and public events. 2 years ago, her alma mater, University of Kentucky, inducted her into the Stanley Karen Pigman College of Engineering Hall of Distinction. And just this past year, and this, I love this recognition, Tracy was selected as one of 15 National Geographic Wayfinder awardees for her various public outreach efforts during her JPL job. I'm just like, oh, that's such a good one. So anyone who attended Thursday's panel, Getting Details Right, will attest that Tracy is passionate about her work. And she also works with the Science and Entertainment Exchange, which is part of the National Academy of Science, and they connect entertainment professionals with top scientists and engineers. And I can just say, I think we all benefit from that sort of collaboration. And she serves on the advisory board for the Interdisciplinary Interplanetary Initiative at Arizona State University. So Tracy's a lifelong learner. She's most recently studying Spanish and Korean, which is all the better to watch the K-dramas.
Yes.
Yeah. She reads widely. Most recently, a lot of nonfiction, and watches sci-fi and documentaries. And she and her husband are kept by 3 cats. And she also, well, I'm going to leave that as a surprise about the Death Star, because, yeah. So one of the things that I find most exciting about Tracy is her enthusiasm and her ability to encourage people of all ages to nurture their curiosity and get excited about science. So I just would love us to all give a nice, huge, warm welcome to Tracy. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marta, for getting through that bio. Wow, that was a mouthful.
Yeah. Well, should we ask, actually, should we start out with the video of we have some highlights from the Europa Clipper's launch, and our fabulous folks over there in technology. We'll play it back here.
Pretend to be as stressed out as I was when this was happening.
Oh, there should be some sound, but there we go.
And liftoff. Liftoff, the Falcon Heavy with Europa Clipper, unveiling the mysteries of an enormous ocean lurking beneath the icy crust of Jupiter's moon, Europa.
Side booster separation confirmed.
Fairing is separated, and those will be recovered by SpaceX's own recovery ship, Go Cosmos.
This is a big moment for the program, for NASA, APL, and JPL. Let's watch.
Europa Clipper, separation confirmed.
And there you go. NASA's Europa Clipper probe, embarking on a long-awaited mission to study Jupiter's icy moon, Europa. And what a sight.
Now they wait for acquisition of signal.
And I believe we have it. Right. There it is. Confirmation of signal from the spacecraft, Europa Clipper.
And for those who were here in 2023, our guest of honor just had a little cameo there from that. I was like, hey, that's...
You might not know he cut the Europa Clipper emblem into his hair and
Oh,
blue,
that's
too.
great. So we had some questions for the audience. So if you could raise your hand if you've worked in aerospace. Okay, yeah, we got one. And raise your hand if you regularly consume all the space news you can find. Okay. And raise your hand if you work in a STEM field. Okay, yeah. So now we know something about y'all. So let's find some more stuff about Tracy. Yeah, so do you want to start the slideshow? Thank you. So tell us about your work on the launch of the Clipper. I mean, that must have been stressful.
It was super stressful. Like, even for a person who has done multiple launches, I wasn't around for the Psyche launch, so I've seen 4 launches.
Yeah.
It's still years and years of blood and sweat and tears to get to that point. And you're a little bit terrified that you haven't done all the things that you could have done, because there's only so much time in the day. And you're also like super worried about how the launch vehicle itself is going to perform. And so you saw a bunch of us in the room. You didn't see me. I was hiding in the corner from the angle of the camera, who were looking through our checklist and talking through all the things that we can control about the spacecraft and making sure that it's ready to go. Those of us who were in Pasadena, California, in the control room and not at the Cape, we're not responsible for all the things that happened to the spacecraft before you launched, but we're responsible for catching the baby, as we like to say, once it detaches from the spacecraft or from the launch vehicle and starts sending telemetry back. It is our job to figure out how it's performing, and if anything's going wrong, exactly what to do about it. And so it's it's kind of a high stress situation.
It seems like a job that you have to be good at letting go, but also very like, I want to make sure I have every detail right. And is that how you work?
That's exactly how it is, and it depends on what your specific role is. On previous missions, I was the person who was responsible for leading the team in the case of an anomaly. And the line you have to draw there is you have to, and on Kepler, we had like a pretty gigantic anomaly right off the launch vehicle. I mean, are you kidding me right now? It doesn't happen very often. And you have to stand back enough to give the team enough time to look at their data and come up with a sense of what is going on and figure out when to pull them together and ask the right questions to lead us to even the mystery game of what just happened and what can we do about it, and then when to give guidance and when not, because you have a lot of experienced people on your team. For the Clipper mission, as the mission manager, I was one step even removed from that, and so you have to pay attention to what's going on across the whole team, nudge the leads in the right direction, and give the proper guidance without being in the way. And that is very, very hard for someone who can be a little bit of a control freak to know when to step back a little bit and not kind of smother everyone. Do it this way, no, like this, what are you looking at? Look over here, right? Because that just gets in their way.
Oh my gosh, striking that balance has got to be really hard. I was also wondering what the weeks were like before the Clipper approached Mars for the flyby. Because I mean, as I understand it, you had to do a bunch of different tests and things.
That's right. People might think that once you launch a spacecraft and everything goes relatively well, then you just go home and take a nap and you're bored out of your mind for the next 5.5 years. And that is not what it is like at all. I mean, I saw many of you raise your hands about following along with space news, so maybe you know this, but in the first several weeks, you need to power on the different components and check them out and make sure they're performing well. And even though we did not have any major anomalies with Europa Clipper, there are always like a triple handful of tiny things that you're like, that's not exactly what we expected. Is that okay? How okay is that? And make sure that you're not going to have any issues going forward. And for those of you who are following the news at all in California, we launched in October last year, and we had several weeks of things to do before we got to the flyby on March 1st. Many weeks. We had a jam-packed schedule of people doing all of these activities with the spacecraft. And we were feeling like we were in pretty good shape, even though we were kind of like sprinting to get it done. And then in January, the entire city caught fire, right, in Altadena. And we ended up we knew that there were going to be high winds in that January morning, and so the evening before, we had told everyone, you know, everyone just take a little bit of a late morning. We'll come in at 10 o'clock when the winds were supposed to have hit their peak and calmed down. And so we had started day one of a 5-day major instrument checkout. People had flown in from Texas for it, and they're like, "We're really going to come in late because of some winds?" And we're like, no, you don't understand. Santa Ana's like, just stay home. And we get in the morning, and we learned that, you know, actually, I think that morning I came in driving through like sideways sandstorm trying to get to the parking lot. A large branch had fallen across the entrance to JPL. I had to turn around and like weave my way through the back gate, which I hadn't done in years, and I'm using GPS to figure out how to get in there. And so we were there most of the day with the lab, telling people, you know, the winds are getting worse. When it's safe, you should just go home. And we're like, we're here flying a spacecraft. Like, how about we not go home yet? And at the end of the day, we went home thinking we would still come back the next morning, and then the fire started that night, and it just kind of went everywhere. And there's a thing that you do with spacecraft. Most flying spacecraft have like a command loss timer. When you don't speak to your spacecraft for several days, it has to take some action in case something's wrong with its radio. So it'll swap radios, it'll do all these things. For missions that have been flying for a long time, you can have that command loss timer set out many days because there's not a lot going on. It can just chill out. For a spacecraft that is, you know, weeks and just a few months old, it's like your baby that is learning how to wiggle its toes, and you've got your baby monitor in the crib, and you're listening to it all the time, and you're running in to check on its nappies, and when you have to yank out the baby monitor, which is what happened, the lab had to power everything down, including the mission support areas, all the computers turned off. The data was still coming in to the deep space networks, but we weren't getting it to JPL and out to any of the ops centers, and so we're, you know, low-key freaking out. The spacecraft is doing well, but our command loss timer was set. We had reset it that day. It was going to expire in like 4.5 days. And if the lab has never powered everything off in its entire 50-year history. And you can't just flip a switch to get it back on. We knew there was going to be a lot of you know, shenanigans to get it powered on. So it was a very stressful day. And ultimately, I can tell you more about that if there are questions later, but we got it all powered up and the command loss timer reset with a couple of days to spare, and then had to figure out how to slowly step our way back into what we were doing, because some of our colleagues lost their homes. You know, the air quality at the lab is very bad. Like it was a long road to getting back to normal operations.
Oh my gosh, that just sounds horrible.
I didn't tell you I was going to talk about that, did I?
That's
Surprise.
okay. I'm totally happy that you went there. Hey, actually, could we flip the slide? Because I think I have a Mars thing next. Oh, nope, I don't. My bad.
It's baby Tracy and
well,
her
we can
mama.
go. Well, you know, we're at a science fiction convention, so maybe we should time travel. Back to your childhood.
Yeah, this is the Tracy Drain origin story. So over on my left, you have my lovely mom who worked at McDonald's when I was a kid. We all thought she looked super cool in her 1970s brown McDonald's uniform. And on the right is my brother and me. He's the taller one. That is not our hair. My mother wore these wigs in the 70s, and we thought they were the cutest. He got the nicer one with like the tighter curls. I really didn't like the one that I was wearing. But that was us at our grandmother's house where we lived when we were young. And in the middle, that's me and my mom. In the front of, if you've ever been to Louisville, Kentucky, random, anybody? Oh, wow. Yes,
yeah.
Louisville, Kentucky. So at the Science Center out front, there's this big dish with like mirrored glass, and that's us standing in front of it the last time we were visiting there.
Oh, cool.
My mom has been my major cheerleader for my entire life. She was the one who introduced me to science fiction and all of its glories. And I know we'll talk later about like representation and why that's important, but my mother and her 3 sisters would rush home from school to watch Star Trek because Uhura looked like their older sister. and that's the only reason why she did. And then she got sucked in and she loved it, and she introduced it to me and my brother. And when I was getting old enough to be asked, what kinds of things do you want to do? I definitely wanted something to do with space, didn't know what. I could not figure out who would pay me to look at the stars. That's all I thought that astronomers did. So pre-internet, I'm at least that old. And so I chose engineering, and I set my sights on getting a job at NASA, and it all goes back to great science fiction writers and actors and shows that inspired my mom and then me as a kid.
Yay.
Star Trek versus Star Wars, hence Star Trek.
Yeah. her is so amazing. I think there's probably so many of us of a certain age that are just like, if it wasn't for her. Yeah, so amazing. So as an undergraduate, you interned at the Langley Research Center in Virginia, and that was the site, unlike the movie Hidden Figures, Margot Lee Shetterly's book Hidden Figures had, that was where all the women computers worked. And, I'm sorry, yes, computers, sorry, I was going to say calculators. And so when you were there, did you know anything about that history? Or
I had no idea about that. I learned about that history with everybody else in 2016 when the book came out. I wound up at NASA Langley because I interned there. When I went to University of Kentucky, which was not too far from my house. My mom got her wish when I went off to college. I was interested in a whole bunch of places, but University of Kentucky recruited very heavily from inside the state. I had a scholarship. They're like, please come to our school and spend your money here. It was a great experience. It was a fabulous university. And one of the things that was a very fortunate, happy accident in my life is when I went into our co-op office. They encouraged all of the engineering and science students to, like, please go intern somewhere and figure out whether this is really what you want to do with your life and whether that's the industry that you want to work in. And I walked into the co-op office expecting them to hand me a sheet of companies that they had interfaced with, because it was Kentucky, so I was expecting construction equipment and printers and oil companies, it's Kentucky. But I walked in and they said, so what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I want to work for NASA. And to my surprise, they said, well, we have a contact with someone at the co-op office in NASA Langley, Virginia, and they got me set up with a phone interview, and I ended up getting hired there for the summer. I mean, you have got to be kidding. And so thank you. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
So I like to tell kids, if someone asks you what you want to do, just tell them, even if you think it's ridiculous, because you never know what opportunities you might get. And when I went there, it was fascinating for me to even drive onto the NASA Langley campus, because it's not like a big NASA sign that you see. That's the thing that is the most evocative. But they have these huge round vacuum spheres that I learned later were used to, like, suck air out of wind tunnels in order to drive them. And we just call them BRTs because everything had to have an acronym, which stood for big round things. Big round spheres that you saw walking in. And I remember setting foot on, going, okay, I'm actually at NASA today, like as a kid, my junior year in school. And it was tremendous. And I met a lot of really cool people and did some really cool work. But I found a book while I was there that was about the history of Langley and the people who had led it over the decades. And I read it cover to cover because I was that kind of kid. And later when I learned about Hidden Figures, I was like, I don't remember any of that in the history that I read. And I found a PDF of that book online, and I searched for computer or woman or black, female, all the things. And I found one line about women computers who worked at Langley. Like, holy cowski. So yeah, I was with everyone else watching the movies with my jaw dropped. It was, amazing.
And the women who did the human computers, I mean, they were accomplished. I mean, master's degrees and more. I mean, it just blows my mind how accomplished they were. And because of their gender and because of the color of their skin, they were denied, being able to, they slowly broke barriers, but it just, it's,
Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And I think even for people who weren't trying to, like, actively repress history, it's just something that didn't occur to people as being interesting or important enough to talk about and promote.
Well, one of the things that's been talked about just, the last 10, 15 years is why it's important to have so many people in the room, different people in the room when designing technology, when designing things. And I wondered if when you're out talking, doing outreach and talking to young people, do you talk to them about that importance?
I do talk to them about that, and it's interesting because even though today, looking back, I can recognize the impact that Uhura had on my mom and me, but I did not know all of that years ago. It was just, I was interested in sci-fi because that's what you did, and I wanted to go work in NASA because space is cool. It's only looking back that I can recognize that tie that was there. And so I used to think that representation wasn't important. So I kind of have sympathy for people who don't get that and think it isn't a thing. They're like, well, why would you ever believe that you should be limited? Just look around and do things. Like, come on, it's not that hard. But I think that representation operates on people at a level that they don't even recognize. And I've bumped into a lot of people who have said it never would have occurred to them to try to do X, not because someone told them that they couldn't, but it just didn't occur to them. And if you didn't have a mom who was like my mom, who thought science fiction was cool, and you weren't exposed to that kind of thing, maybe your eyes would just be closed to a path that you could have taken. And so the things that I talk to the kids about is to, number one, have them talk to their friends about things that they think are interesting. You know, you can have a lot of peer mentoring and things like that. I do tell them to don't just be closed and only look for people who represent you, because we don't have representation everywhere yet, but also that they can find the stories of folks who are like them and have experiences like them if they dig a little bit too. There's more there than you might think.
Yeah, no. Well, I'm not really sure what time it is, but should we open things up to the audience?
Sure, yeah, let's do it. Lots of stories in here, so we'll see what you guys are interested in talking about.
And Crystal, they are bringing a mic around, so raise your hand if you have a question.
Oh, it's so bright up
I know. I believe there's somebody down
There's
there.
one over here.
Yes.
This on? They'll turn it on. Okay. So you were talking about the trip to Europa. How did the decision come about to choose Europa as the target?
Yeah, that is a great story. How much do I even know about that? Let's see. So disclaimer, I joined the mission in 2000 when that was like deep, deep history. My understanding about it is there's a bunch of different ways. This is a long story. I'm sorry, I don't do stories. Here you go. So there are a lot of ways that missions get selected to be funded at NASA. You can have one of the main ways is that a bunch of scientists get together and do what they call a decadal survey, which is once every 10 years they go and talk about what are the really cool, interesting, juicy, amazing things that scientists would love to go and understand. And so a lot of people spend many weeks working on this, thinking about it, and writing this giant document that you can go download for free in a PDF and read through it in gory detail. And then some missions just get funded by NASA. You are a flagship mission, go and do this very cool thing. Europa was a mission that is like that. Some missions have what they call a proposal process. There's a discovery class proposal, which has a certain amount of funding, and NASA centers and private industry team up together and put together these proposals, and they get down selected. It's kind of like, what is one of those games? It's like a Survivor game show, where you get down selected by the ones that have the most potential and the most efficiency, dollar per science value, and then they get selected. And some of the missions I've worked on have been like that. Kepler was a discovery class mission. And then they have New Frontiers class missions, which is a bit more money to do harder science, things that are farther out, and those can get selected. So a long time ago, Europa was funded as a flagship mission. There is a fantastic book called The Mission, with a really, really long subtitle that I cannot even remember, written by a guy named, it's almost like Dan Brown, the guy who wrote the other books. Oh, I can't remember. The Mission. Look for The Mission Europa Clipper, and it's a surprisingly hilarious story about the selection of the Europa Clipper mission and all the scientists who worked for years to try to get it funded. And it's too bad that we didn't have an image of Bob Papalardo, who's been our lead scientist for, I want to say well over 15 years on this mission, screaming when the mission was launched because they've been trying to get it going for so very long. Yeah. Yep.
Well, it just seems like there's so many interesting scientific questions that could be answered by Europa. But that could be said about any moon and any planet in our solar system. So I can understand why it would be hard to make choices about that.
Yeah, that's true. And for the who knows, how many people have never heard of the Moon Europa Clipper and do not know why anybody would care about it? Anybody in this room? Okay, here's one. So I'm going to talk to you for a second. Hi. So Europa is one of the moons of Jupiter. It's one of the 4 largest, big enough that Galileo found it in his telescope way back in the early 1600s. And it is almost the size of the Earth's moon. And when you look at it, it doesn't have very many craters on the surface. It doesn't look like our moon. It doesn't look like these huge pockmarked things. And scientists, when we had images enough to tell us that it was like that, we're like, gee, that's weird. And it has like all these long cracks across the surface. And people theorize something has to be going on that is resurfacing it regularly enough to not have all the bombardments. Jupiter is a big planet. It like pulls in a lot of things, and so everything is like pockmarked if the surface is not getting refreshed. And so when the Galileo spacecraft went by in the late 90s, early 2000s, it had a magnetometer that was measuring the magnetic field of Jupiter. And if anyone's curious, we can talk a little bit about why Jupiter has just a monstrously huge magnetic field. Anyway, magnetic fields can be bent by a variety of things. And as the magnetometer was going past Europa, it noticed that Jupiter's magnetic field lines are bent and warped. And what scientists know is that here on Earth, our Earth's magnetic field lines get bent when the Earth's tides are going in and out, because salty water is conductive, and that interferes with the magnetic field lines and bends them. And so scientists had pretty strong evidence that beneath a layer of ice on Europa, there is a lot of water. And they think it's probably like more than 2 times all the oceans on the Earth combined. I know, right? This is ridiculous, huge amount of water. And that what's happening is, as Europa goes around Jupiter, its orbit is not perfectly circular. When you're closer to a body, the gravity is stronger. You are pulling on me with your gravity right now. When we're farther apart, the gravity is a little bit weaker. And so in a non-perfectly circular orbit, when Europa is closer to the moon, it gets getting squeezed a little more. When it's farther away, it gets squeezed a little bit less. And so every time it goes around in this 14-day cycle, it's like the squeeze, release, which ends up heating up the rocks deep inside the moon enough to create enough heat to melt just insane amounts of water. And then the surface cracks, and then the water wells up and like fills in any pockmarks, and that's why it looks like that. It is a really crazy place. And on the Earth, deep down at the bottom of the Earth, where it's so much water that sunlight doesn't filter down there, we have a lot of hot water from hydrothermal vents. And even though there's no sunlight, there's a lot of energy, there's water, there's chemistry. And so scientists have seen, you take deep submersibles down there, there's a huge teeming ecosystem at the bottom of Earth's oceans. And so scientists are like, I wonder what it's like in the bottom of Europa. Like, there's water, there's an energy source, like maybe there's carbon and hydrogen and oxygen. Like they're like super stoked that this could be a place that's been simmering like that for 4.5 billion years that could sustain life. So do we know if there's life down there? No. Is Europa Clipper going to find it? No, because we're just going to be doing flybys. But I know, sad, but we have enough instruments on board in order to determine what's the composition of the surface. And if we get lucky and there's like a geyser, like they've seen on the moon of Saturn, then we might be able to see like what's in there. So the scientists have been salivating about Europa for a very long time, and that's why. I'm glad you were in here so I could tell like everybody.
No, I mean, I'm just like, okay, it's going to be 5 years before we know anything.
That's what my mom says. She is so ticked about that. She's like, why can't you get there faster? That's just stupid. Space is big. Thank you.
Space is big, yes. Let's see. One of the things I wanted to ask about, because when it comes to this exploration, I don't want to say it's baby steps, but Europa, the Clipper, is like one step, and based on that, there could be future steps, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Baby steps is exactly what it is. Do not feel bad about using that. That's what we did when humans were first going to the moon. We sent flybys, and then we sent orbiters, and then we sent landers, and then we sent people, and like rinse and repeat for Mars, rinse and repeat for Europa. And the thing that is even more challenging about Europa is, okay, now we're going to talk about Jupiter and its magnetic field, because cool. So Jupiter If you do not like live and breathe gas giants all the time, don't do that. You will die. See, I talk to kids. I'm just pretending you guys are a bunch of middle schoolers out there.
Wait a minute, Lando's alive.
So Jupiter is so big. You could fit 11 Earths across the center of it. Like, it's enormous if you don't think about that all the time. But even though it is that big, it doesn't have any solid surface. It's mostly hydrogen and helium and then some trace things and make it all pretty colored. And as you go deeper and deeper under the surface of the clouds, even though it's just gas, there's so much of it that the force of gravity it has is enormous. And it pulls in on itself with so much force that as you get deeper and deeper under the clouds, you get to a point where the hydrogen and helium are compressed into a liquid, like an planet-wide liquid hydrogen down there. And as you go deeper, the temperature gets higher, the pressure gets higher, and each little hydrogen atom has one little lonely electron that like zips around it all the time. But the pressures and temperatures are so high, they get squeezed right off the atom, and they're free to flow in there. And if you remember your high school physics, flowing electrons is electricity, and Jupiter, even though it's so big, it rotates really fast on its axis. We here on Earth turn around in a leisurely 24 hours. Jupiter rotates once every 10 hours. And if you remember your high school physics too, when you rotate an electrical field, that generates a magnetic field. And so Jupiter has this truly monstrous magnetic field. And when you have charged particles, like the charged particles from the solar wind or from volcanic Io that's spewing out all the stuff, they hit the magnetic field lines, they get accelerated to near relativistic speeds, and then they go slamming into the planets and the surface. So this makes like this donut, technical term, of radiation around Jupiter. Jupiter sits inside the donut hole. And Europa, one of the moons, orbits inside that radiation field. And so it is really hard to go study that moon. That's one of the reasons why this mission isn't going to go orbit Europa. We would just get fried. So we orbit Jupiter technically, but in a big orbit where we fly by Europa once every 14 to 21 days. So we kind of get in there, take a bunch of pictures, take a bunch of data, get the heck out of there in order to survive all of the 50 passes that we want to do of that moon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. What did you ask me? What question?
No, you totally answered it. You totally answered it. As I say, are there? Yes. Oh, wait.
Are you going to be doing much study of Jupiter and the other moons while you're up there?
Good question. Are we going to be studying Jupiter and the other moons? I was actually fortunate enough to work on a mission called Juno, which launched in 2011 and is still at Jupiter, studying Jupiter, the planet specifically. And so Europa Clipper is not designed to study Juno. It's already got a cousin out there doing that. But we do intend to do some flybys of a couple of the other moons, especially Ganymede and Callisto, some of them in order to help us set up our trajectory to go by Europa the way we want to, and some of it because there is a European spacecraft called JUICE, which is also going to be studying the Jovian system and some overlapping time, and we want to be able to compare data. So, Good question.
Yeah. There's
a couple way back in the
back. Thank
Oh,
you.
and in the middle.
Oh, yeah.
Run.
Why don't we go closest and then work your way back?
It's like whoever looks the most excited.
Yeah.
I'm so
Thank
excited
you.
to get to see you because my granddaughter is 10 years old and she wants to be an aeronautics engineer. She has already, a year ago she wanted to be a biology something or other, but but I want to keep her on that path because Uhura is my idol from childhood, obviously. How do I keep directing her? Go towards engineering, go towards...
Oh, yeah, good luck with that, huh? No, so, no, really, serious answer, here it comes. So, I found, my mom is such a smart lady. I don't know how, whatever. So one of the things that was the best for me is that I never felt any pressure from her to do any specific thing. She was just like, you're interested in this? Here. You're interested in that? Here. Like, I think I scared her a little bit when I was like, I really like music, Mom. I'm going to play the clarinet. She was like, I love you. I love that for you. I want you to eat, right? Like, and we didn't have enough background to know ways that you could have a lucrative life in those things. It's kind of unfortunate. Anyway, So I would actually guide you not to feel like you have to keep her on that path. But I'll give you this piece of advice. A lot of times people ask me, hey, I'm interested in space, but me and math are not friends. Like, how do I do the space thing? And I like to tell people that it kind of takes a village to do the sort of work that we do. At JPL, we have people who are full-time lawyers who work for Caltech because space policy is a thing, and we have to know that we're doing things correctly. We have people who are computer scientists. Maybe they do cybersecurity thing. Maybe they do admins of all our machines. We have people who are educators who handle a lot of our outreach. We have people who studied biology and now they do planetary protection. So you can pretty much come up with anything you are interested in and still tie it back to space. You do not have to be an engineer or a scientist to do it. So while I love to hear about young ladies especially who are on that path, and I'd love to give you some tips on things that can keep her away from the things that can discourage her, that aren't just losing interest, but are people telling her she can't do it. Come on! And people who are telling her, well, if you fail a class, clearly you can't do it. For those of you who were at the panel that I was on yesterday, I divulged that I got a D in chemistry my freshman year. And someone might tell her, well, I'm sorry, honey, you're not smart enough to do that. Just wrong, hit the buzzer. So there are lots of things that you can help support her if she just feels like it's becoming hard or people are putting obstacles in her way. Use your resources. If you fail at something, try it again. Like lots of people, hork it up the first time. You learn a lot of good things about failure. But yeah, not an A, you really need to do this sense, because that might just push her away. Yeah. Come talk to me later. I have more things for you. Yeah.
And then there's a couple folks in the back.
Hi. So my question more has to do with like when you're on the job. There's a couple of jobs I've seen, ice truckers being one of them, where it's the best way to describe it is moments of like long moments of pure boredom, punctuated by moments of sheer terror. I was just wondering, do you have any moments like that in your career, considering how you are essentially manning a little blip in the absolute vacuum of space?
Yeah, there are so many of all of those things. Times where you're like, it's kind of drudgery, and one of the reasons why I like to do this is when there's too much drudgery, you go talk to people and say, I have a spacecraft in space, and they're like, dude, that's cool. You're like, yeah, this is cool. So it kind of helps you get over the hump of those, and also working with a lot of fantastic people who often are hilarious too. There's a whole thing about how a sense of humor combines with being smart or having high intelligence. Like that's a whole thing. We should have a panel just on that. And then those moments punctuated by sheer terror. Like there are so many of those. If you are not a little bit of an adrenaline junkie, you probably don't want to do this kind of job. And one of them happened recently. Like we were talking earlier about Europa Clipper and what we're doing in the weeks after you've launched. And again, with the baby and a baby monitor, and you know, when your kid's a toddler or 5 years old, they can run around and do things, and you don't feel like you have to keep an eye on them like every single second. But when they're newborns, like any little sound they make, and you're like freaking out, is it okay? And in these first several weeks, we have constant contact with the spacecraft. Like you always have a DSN station pointed at it. Maybe it's down for 5 or 10 minutes, which is one of the reasons why the fire like freaked us all out. But then you get to a point where, well, now you're only going to talk to it for 8 hours a day, and then you're only going to talk to it for 8 hours every other day. And we're still finishing some pretty serious checkouts of the spacecraft. And this one thing, I saw one of my colleagues, Winston, in there that made me giggle, because we were doing this activity with the spacecraft where usually you only have one computer on at a time. But then you're like transferring some stuff over to the second computer, so you power on the second computer, and you're doing some things with it. It's not supposed to take over. It's not HAL. Like, it's not designed that way. But you still just want to be watching it the whole time. And the activity we were doing was just taking longer than we anticipated. Everyone thinks at NASA everything goes exactly according to this thing. No, that is not a thing. So it was taking longer than we anticipated, and we're starting to like sweat it out a little bit because our Deep Space Network pass, our ground station track, was going to come to an end, like at a hard time. You cannot extend it. Your Earth is rotating out of view, and we didn't have another one after that. And we wanted to finish up that procedure, turn off the backup computer, because we were not ready to let it have its two brains on overnight with nobody watching, like the monitor out of the baby crib. And something was taking longer than it was supposed to, and we had two options. Number one, leave it alone and let it go through the night with its second brain on, and just know when it finished its sequence, it should just sit there and be fine. We did not like that option. Option number 2, interrupt what it was doing in the middle to shut off that sequence, power off the backup computer, and then figure out how to clean it up the next day. We did not like that option because we had too much going on the next day, and we hadn't tested in simulation the interrupting that specific sequence. And so we've got 2 hours until the end of the pass to figure this out, and we're still not sure it's going to end. And we're like, okay, who do we need in the room? Call the avionics people, call the so-and-so, let's have a conversation while people are on console looking at the clock, doing the calculation. We have a 5-minute round trip flight time. You have to send it here and stop, and we're, and my job as mission manager is to make sure everyone is calm, we're thinking about all the right things, we're pulling the people in, and we have a flight director who's really empowered to call the shots on what we're doing in the room. And this particular person has some years of experience, but baby spacecraft, and so we're all a little on edge, and we just have to make a decision. And that was stressful. And you realize that either option would probably have been okay. But when you're dealing with a $5 billion mission, you're probably okay doesn't feel very good. And so we just had to talk our way around to making a choice. And as the mission manager, I'm like, okay, we've talked to enough people, we are doing this, let's go. And then you have to just cut off the little voice of regret that's like, are you sure? We still have 5 minutes, maybe we should think about this a little more. And you're like, no, we're gonna be done. And then we decided to let it finish the sequence and keep 2 brains on overnight, because in space, usually the less you can do to a spacecraft, the better, because if you poke it, you might then have regret that you poked it in the wrong way. And so then we all went home and had a slightly restless night, came back in the morning, and the spacecraft was fine. We're like, oh, good baby clipper. So yeah, you have moments like that, and you just have to figure out ways to handle the stress. We can talk about mindfulness later too. I love that.
I'm kind of surprised somebody wasn't like, I'll take a cot.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm gonna sleep right there. Yeah.
So let's, and
you were
then
going to
after you,
circle
we have
back
somebody up
to
front.
the Death Star earlier.
Oh, I'm sorry. Say it one more time.
You were going to circle back to the Death Star.
Good for you.
Do you mind tossing up the slides again?
Do we know which one is the Death Star?
I cannot remember
I don't
which
think
number,
I've labeled it
but
well.
it's in there. So just keep advancing.
Ooh,
And
hey, my pals.
yeah. There's Mars.
There's Mars.
I thought it was the second one. But, all right. We have more. We're going to have
If you
to
went
ask
to
a
the
question
dance, you saw
about
me in that
media
outfit.
and stuff. But
These are all the spoilers. Right?
yes. Yes. Aw.
It's
So let's see. Where's? Oh, yeah. You're
Points for anyone who recognizes that guy.
Yes.
Yay, hey.
Yes. And some more stars. And then, oh, does anybody recognize
Triple
Jill?
points for anyone who
Yeah.
recognizes that person.
Yes, it
No,
is.
Aw, should've
But
picked.
do you know who she is? Well, shall we say?
Yeah, she directed SETI for many years, and if you saw the movie Contact, Jodie Foster's character was based on her. That's Dr. Jill Tarter, yeah. She's very cool.
Yeah. So let's see. We should be getting some. Okay. I should have put the Death Star for sooner.
There are stories.
But I think it's the next one.
Yeah.
There's the Death Star.
So I don't know if does anyone celebrate May the 4th out there? May the 4th, yes, of course you do.
Yeah.
And so we do this at work too, when we have time for it. And so we will have little parties where people will make, I think those are not TIE Fighter, X-Wing little snacks. And I made the Death Star. I found a thing online where you can, carve out a small watermelon and scoop the little watermelon balls out. And I remembered that it was May the 4th, 2 days before. And I'm like, oh, go get one of that. So this is why, just excuse the craftsmanship. But
Well, but see, I think this is a really good example of your ability as an engineer to go, okay, what's the problem? What are the solutions? Narrow in.
I don't have very much time. I can get one piece of fruit.
Because I would have been like, where do I buy Yoda cookies? And you're like, what do I have? What materials do I have? How can I solve this problem?
right.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just think this is why I was like, it's a delightfully delicious Death Star, but I also think it's a really good example of Tracy's skill set.
Yeah. And it's nutritious. I was very paleo at the time. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So I can't remember what the next photos are, but yeah, some more fun photos. Yeah. So concert and rafting.
Quadruple points if anyone knows what
Yeah.
group that concert was for.
Yeah, I
I might
purposely
not
didn't
tell
put
you.
it on
I'm
there.
going to tell you at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh, later. You just have to stew in that one.
Yeah. Yes.
Questions back there?
Yeah.
Now you have to ask about the pictures you saw if you want to see anything more.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Working now?
Ah,
Yes, there it is. Okay. So my question is self-serving. Can you use your influence to re-up the show, how the universe works, and get you and your program
Ooh.
on it?
Oh, wow.
Please.
I am going to write that one down. You will be disappointed to know I have not seen the show How the Universe Works, but I'm always keen to like get at people and help them like learn about space and science and math in ways that are fun, right? So yeah, I'm all for it.
Grandma who wants to keep her grandchild
Yes,
excited about space, how the universe works.
absolutely.
I watch the series, and then I watch it again, and then I watch it again, and I watch it again. Because I
Nice.
learn something new every single
I
time.
love that. How the universe works for your granddaughter.
Sounds- actually, one of the things I was wondering about, because I know Hollywood is filled with NDAs, but is there anything you can talk about with the Science and Entertainment Exchange?
Oh my gosh, let me
Yeah.
see. So I'll tell you a little bit about the Science and Entertainment Exchange. You heard earlier that it's a group that tries to get STEM professionals, and not just STEM professionals, like also lawyers and medical professionals, to connect with writers and producers and actors in order to help them learn more about really cool science that they can infuse into their stories, and also a broader diversity of characters that they can infuse into their stories as well. And there's so many things that the Science and Entertainment Exchange does in terms of events where they put together like mixers for people to get together and talk about things, but also you can call a number. I said it wrong at the panel yesterday, but if you are a writer or someone who just needs to get in touch with subject matter experts, you can dial 1-844, I said 877 yesterday, 1-844-NEED, N-E-E-D, Sci, S-C-I. And either Rick Lovard or Sachi will answer the phone, and you can say, I really need someone who can tell me about quasars. Do you have anyone like that? And likely they do, and they'll hook you up with them, and you can talk to them about it. And so I've gotten a chance to do some consults for people. No one that you would probably know, because they like to help everybody, whether you're a big name or not. And what can I tell you? Okay, this probably won't get me into too much trouble. I talked to someone who was working on, I'm filtering as the words are coming out of my mouth. Many of you have read a lot of books that have to do with large ships that are going somewhere like for decades and decades, right? These kind of generation ships and what they mean. And they wanted to explore more things about different kinds of propulsion systems you could use, different ways to deal with the problem of gravity versus centrifugal force and all of that kind of thing. And so I love being able to help them with that. I am not a person who knows anything about anti-gravity because we don't have that yet, and I'm not working on it. But I like to help them think through some of the basic physics concepts and then give them places where it would be more obvious and easy for them to stretch the science and engineering in ways that we don't know it. So that's always fun.
Yeah, because I mean, in the Star Trek universe, it's the magic gravity works.
Yeah, that's right.
Because it's a lot easier than filming no G.
Yes.
So, but yeah, no, that's fascinating. Yeah. We've got about 5 minutes left for questions, right? 15. Oh, okay. So we go the whole hour. My bad.
Nah, that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I did not see if there was some more hands.
There are pictures
up there.
that
Yes,
flash
we've
by
got
that
one
you're
down
like,
in
please
front.
tell me
Yes,
about
in a,
that.
I believe a dark sweatshirt. Yeah.
Say some more words. Uh-oh, microphone.
Microphone, please.
Microphone. Hi.
Talk loud.
There you go.
Okay.
Thanks.
So my question is, have you ever been in the situation that you've spent all those years, all that time, you get everything going, it goes up and everything's great, and then it crashes? Or
yeah, I know, right? Such a fair question. I'm gonna like look for some. So for me personally, I've been very fortunate that that has not yet happened to me in my career. And I use the word yet like for reals, because even though Europa Clipper survived its launch, we did our Mars gravity assist just fine, it's on its merry little way, it still has a long way to go. And it is, of course, every engineer's worst nightmare that you spend all this time building something, you pour your soul into it, and then it doesn't work. And what do you do? And yeah, I have colleagues who have lived through that experience and gotten to learn from them, like, what do you do? How do you do your best to like learn as much as possible from that so that we can feed that forward to future missions and avoid whatever it was that did them in? But yeah, not yet. I've been charmed so far in 25 years. Hopefully never.
When I think about like all the things on the way, it is like raising a child. It's like, okay, they're crossing the street. Okay, they're crossing the asteroid belt.
Oh my gosh, that is exactly right, yeah. We just recently, this is still April, right? And on May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, Revenge of the Sith, Revenge of the Fifth, we are going to cross the distance of being 2 astronomical units away from the sun. So, 93 million times 2 miles. And that actually is a good thing for us because our spacecraft was designed to operate well at Jupiter distances, where you're really far away from the sun. It's pretty cold out there. And so when we're very close to the sun, we actually have to like contort a little bit to deal with the extra heat load we get from the sun. And so we have to keep our high gain antenna pointed from the sun most of the time. And if we turn away too much, we get hot. Well, the farther you get away from the Earth, the harder it is to maintain a good telecom link if you can't point your high gain antenna at the Earth. And so right now we're in what we call our low data rate period, where we're too close to the sun so that we can't turn our antenna away, but we're too far from the Earth so that we have to use low data rate. And so one of the reasons I get to be here with you fine people today is that we can't do much with the spacecraft right now. It's in a quiet period. I'm like, I'm gonna be gone for a couple of weeks, bye. And on May 5th, we cross the 2 AU boundary where now we can turn our high gain antenna to the Earth all the time, and our level of activity is gonna pick up again, where some things that we couldn't finish before Mars flyby because of the fires, we're gonna finish once we get there, and there's a whole bunch of other things, a flight software update to do. Like, we're gonna be busy little bees for a handful of months. Yeah.
So there'll be a ton of milestones on May the 5th.
Yeah, so many, yeah. Our spacecraft, it's like, we've gone through the baby in the cradle stage. It's not quite at its first day of school. That'll probably be when we get to Jupiter, but it's got a lot of things to do to get there. Yeah.
Well, and I was thinking, like, Jupiter just orbiting around it sounds very scary. I'm like, the bullies of space.
Yeah.
So that's just like, wow. Because, I mean, that's, anything can happen on the journey, and then Jupiter's Jupiter,
yeah. Orbit insertion is one of the scariest milestones in a spacecraft's trajectory to get to where it's going, because when you're going through space or you're cruising, things can happen that are not great, but most of the time it's pretty stable. But when you get to like the Mars flyby that we did, or we're going to do an Earth flyby in December 2026, stay tuned. But in April 2030, when we arrive at Jupiter, we have to burn our engines in order to get captured by gravity. And for those of you who follow along with space, you're used to orbit insertions taking, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour. Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter took 35 minutes. Juno took around 30 minutes. That is a long time to be stressed out to make sure your spacecraft is burning its engines for that long. Like, you think that you can maintain a high level of excitement like you do on launch day, but you're like stressed and the things are going, you're excited, and then after 5 minutes, you're like, I'm gonna go take a break and a nap and I'll be back. But Juno, our Europa Clipper, has to burn its engines for 7 hours to get captured. Oh my God. That is going to be one monstrous day for us, because there's a lot of prep you have to do to get the spacecraft configured and pointed in the right direction and all ready to go. And then it just has to burn and burn and burn and burn and burn. It's going to be ridiculous.
Oh, wow. That's like an ultra marathon at a sprint.
I'm not actually looking forward to that. I mean, I'm looking forward to getting there, but that whole day is going to be like, wow.
Yeah. Maybe you guys need to get like massage therapists to come in or something.
I'm going to write that down somewhere.
No problem.
That is a great
I always
idea.
got ideas. Yeah, because I mean, it's like, I'm feeling a little tense.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just work on those shoulders.
We'll have a few chairs and rotate people through. I like it.
Yeah. So I thought we had a few more slides, but I can't remember. Yes, but
there
we
are
do have
questions.
So I'm gonna, who was the first person then? Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Hello.
Is it working?
Yep.
There we go. You briefly mentioned about having to adjust the antenna on May the 5th, but then you mentioned you're doing an Earth flyby. You're going to be back under. Are you going to have to redo it again?
Yes, very astute of you. So because even though we launched on a Falcon Heavy, our spacecraft is ridiculously huge. I failed to talk about this. I don't know. It would not quite fit in this room. It is about. Numbers are escaping me. If you had an NBA-sized basketball court and put the spacecraft on it, the 2 solar arrays would hang off the edges. Like, it is a very massive spacecraft, and it weighs about 13,000 pounds, around like an African elephant-sized spacecraft. And so we didn't actually have a launch vehicle ready that was big enough to send it on a direct trajectory all the way out there. If we did, we could have gotten there in about 2.5 years. Would have made my mom much happier. But instead, we launched on a Falcon Heavy, and that gave us enough oomph that we had to go out. We had to do a Mars flyby after about 5 months in March, and that set up us to like loop back around and come back to 1AU where the Earth is and get another gravity assist, and that will kick us all the way out. So we're passing the 2AU in May, and then we'll come back in and do our Earth flyby in April 2026. So we will have another low data rate period where we have to point our high gain antenna at the sun and have to deal with dribbles of data and like not do a whole bunch with the spacecraft for some months. Yeah, very good.
And there was another.
Where'd our mic go?
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Well, the short version is Mars needs women. The question is, are there any specific programs in NASA that's deliberately going out and trying to get young women?
Ooh, are there any that are programs at NASA are deliberately trying to go out and
get young women?
Get young women. Yes. And recruit young women in STEM. That is a great question. The answer is yes. Do I know what they are? So here's the thing. For me, I get to do a lot of outreach. I get to choose what types of things that I do. And I like to visit schools and talk to their Society of Women Engineers. When I went to Arizona State University, I got to talk to a group of young women. So I can go do a bunch of stuff, and I know that NASA has programs that are doing that too. I don't have off the top of my head exactly what they are, and I know that things evolve and change over the years. For me personally, it's very important for me to advocate for those things and hope that we continue funding them because, in my opinion, as Marta alluded to earlier, having a lot of different types of people on your teams is important because we all think differently. You guys are here for a science fiction con. You know that different authors have different ideas, and depending on where you grew up or what kind of people you were around, you might come up with things that someone else would never, ever in a million years have come up with. The same thing is true when we're trying to solve engineering problems or coming up with designs for missions. The more neurodiversity you have in the room, and that can be influenced by your gender identity, by your ethnicity, by your culture, by your whatever, the more mixed up that pot is, the more likely we'll come up with the great ideas that are going to help us do the right things. And so I love the idea of trying to encourage young women to be in STEM, to try to encourage people from different countries to be in STEM, to try to encourage underrepresented minorities, like everybody, to do the thing. So, good question. New Mexico Tech, okay. I will add that to my list. Nice, yay.
And then I think, okay, so there was a couple here. Yeah.
2 minutes, talk fast.
So, let's do the tan jacket. I think it's tan. It's hard to tell. Right.
As someone who is launching space vehicles for research. Do you have a hot take on space tourism?
Ooh, do I have a hot take on space tourism? We need like another 45 minutes. So I personally have dedicated my career to doing science because what really excites me is the expanding the knowledge of the species about what's out there. I got a chance to go to the panel on Wonder, and like for me, like seeing a nebula for the first time, seeing what the crazy North Pole of Jupiter looks like for the first time, like that's where it's at. For space tourism, I'm a little of two minds about it because on the one hand, anything that gets anyone else interested in space, yay. But on the other hand, there's always the struggle about access and equity in space. And it's so challenging to do space tourism in a way that doesn't shut out entire groups of people. So that was an ambivalent answer, but I kind of feel of two minds about it.
Yeah. And then we have time for one more? Yeah. Last one.
Last one.
Sorry, the stripes on the dark shirt.
You might have to like come find me in the hallway for those of you who didn't get an answer. Yeah.
Hot take, have you thought at all about the ways that the technology you're using and developing changes the consciousness of the people using it? Just based on all the stuff you've said about awe and wonder.
Yeah, and so the ways that the technology we're developing changes the consciousness of the people who are using them. There's two answers to that. One of them, you would be surprised that a lot of the things that we do are not on the cutting edge of technology, because in order to know that our $5 billion spacecraft is going to survive, we can't use like super brand new stuff. We want stuff that has been tested and tried and true, and we know that that is going to work. And so you will not find AI on the spacecraft. Nope. And so it tends to be things that people are used to using. There are some places where we have to push the bounds, but it's like really obscure things like software that is like time and space partition based instead of interrupt driven, and that's like not doing anything to anybody's consciousness really. But I tend to think about the ways in which the science discoveries that are being made change things, or that I would like to change things in society. The idea that there could be all of the right conditions for life on Europa, I like to think would cause us to have some philosophical ponderings about things and how to just be nicer to each other because we have more in common than like bacteria are going to have on Europa, for example. So I think about it, but me, engineer, baby philosopher, and so I don't have lots of profound things to share about it. Well, I think that's it. We're going to get kicked out, aren't we?
I was going to say, we don't want to get kicked out. So before we say goodbye, I just want to remind everyone that Tracy's next panels will be tomorrow, starting at 10 a.m. with an autograph session. Then noon, a panel on how speculative fiction informs our beliefs. And then there's more panels on Sunday, including closing ceremonies, right?
That's right.
So do check your program or your guidebook for details. And was there anything you wanted to share that we hadn't had time to get to?
I just want to say thank you for coming. It's been lovely having a nice back and forth with you guys. And you heard in my bio that I have been reading more nonfiction and more documentaries. I just got to say, this is a lovely conference. And it's been delightful to just listen to the other speakers and hear people in the audience share their stories about the books that have had impacts, books and shows that have had impacts on them. It's just reminding me why I love science fiction so much. And I'm just like, please come chat with me, whether it's about this stuff or it's about books that you learned. I love getting tips from people on things to read. This is such a warm and welcoming, lovely event to be at, and I'm glad to be here to share it with all of you.
Thank you so much. And if you could also give a yeehaw to the folks who were making sure all the technology went well. Thank you.
감사합니다. 고마워요.